Just two adjacent girls living in a lovely world. They took a podcast train going anywhere, but kind of specifically through Austin, Texas. Yeah, hook 'em horns. Welcome back, y'all. Welcome back to Adjacent. Today we have an incredible interview with somebody we're adjacent to because we're adjacent to greatness. So this is so exciting to see how we are building upon all of the foundations, and then it's the building, and then it's the roof. I can't believe it. Shelly, who do we have today? Tell us everything.
This is so exciting. So we have Dr. Rae Taylor on today, and y'all may have heard her mentioned in 2 previous podcasts, and we're so grateful that she's taken the time to join us. And so Dr. Rae Taylor is married to Dr. Christian Bolden, and they met at University of Central Florida. And she is dynamic. Very excited to have her on board. I can't wait to learn everything she has to share.
Me too. I just think it's so fascinating that this podcast is taking us down so many different places. And so we had Mary Wynn, and then we had Dr. Bolden, and now Rae, and then we're kind of springboarding that into some new interviews that are coming up. And Shelly and I talked about how it would be so cool to have like a board that shows how we're all connected in such a unique way. But she definitely is a leader in her field. And we said with Dr. Bolden that she has the pucker factor where she walks in the room and people like cinch up. They're just so impressed with the kind of person she is. And you guys are going to be impressed too. I mean, I don't think you're going to have a fear for her. You're going to have a love for her and what she has and what she's fighting for justice for people who have suffered terrible crimes, and also looking at people who are being misused by the justice system. So without any further ado, please welcome
Dr. Rae Taylor.
Adjacent, very near, next to, or touching. Our tailgate is adjacent to the left field fence. ADJACENT. Adjacent.
Guys, she's here. She's here.
I'm so excited.
I love your beanie, your pink beanie. It's gorgeous. And I'm wearing a beanie too because we are suffering from some cold weather in the southern parts. We're not used to it, right?
That's right.
We're so happy you're here with us. So we had the pleasure of interviewing your amazing husband, Dr. Bolden, and now we get to see his better half.
Oh, I loved your conversation. I had a lot of fun listening to that, and to Mary Wynn, who was just such a hero.
Gosh, I know. She's my hero too. Shelly and I we love her so much. I can't believe that not only did I score with marrying John, but I got this amazing sister-in-law and brother-in-law. They're like incredible people. So
yeah,
I'm lucky like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, straight out of the chute, I have to ask. You listened to Christian's interview, and Jody said you had the pucker factor. Did that make you laugh?
Yeah, yes. Okay, so you have to know my husband is my hype man, and I didn't ask him to do that, but he just is, and I love him for that. But I don't know about that. But I don't want to scare anybody, but I do want people to know that if they bring it, I'm going to bring it, And so when we are, like in my line of work, if we're trying to criminalize people that we should be lifting up and helping, then I'm going to be there on the front lines of that. And so I don't know about the pucker factor is hilarious, though.
Hilarious.
I'm working too hard to stop and think about it. I'll just tell you that. But I've heard him say things like that before, and I think, I don't know. I don't know about that.
I just think it'd be great if, like, you walk in the courtroom and people are just like, "Oh, she's here. All right."
It's hard for me to imagine being the scariest one in the courtroom, but I bet I am the most passionate, and I think that's what comes through and probably is like, oh gosh, do we want to mess around with this or do we want to do the right thing?
Yeah,
And
let's go.
both sides. I mean, I'm always on the side of the survivor of violence or the person who didn't get the chance to survive. And so sometimes that makes me there for the state. Sometimes that puts me on the side of the defense. Unfortunately, increasingly that side because of what we're doing to these women. But anyway, I love it, very passionate about it.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, we're going to ask you a few questions other than about your pucker factor. So tell us where you grew up. Where are you from originally?
Well, okay. So my standard answer, where are you from, is I'm from here now, which is New Orleans. But I was born and raised in Northeast Mississippi. And I left in my sophomore year of college. So I lived there. Well, and I lived in Georgia when I was little too. So anyway, I moved to Florida, to Orlando, to Central Florida. And when was that, 95 or 96? And I lived there for 13 years, finished all my education there, and then moved here 15 and a half years ago to when I got my job out of grad school and all of that. So this is home. If I leave here and move anywhere else, I will still, when people ask, where are you from? I'll say New Orleans because I'm from here now.
Yes, I see that.
You made it your home. What part of Georgia?
South Georgia. I was like 1 to 6, so I don't remember. Well, I'm terrible with geography, but I know it's south, but a little teeny town called Adel near Valdosta.
I know exactly where it was. I lived in Doran.
Oh my gosh, really?
And Moultrie, yes.
What? I don't think I've heard that word Moultrie since I was there.
No.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that was small world.
From 1 to 6 and then back to Mississippi until I was 19, 20. Yeah.
Nice.
And tell me about your family. Like, was it your mom, dad, or how was your family orchestrated? Like, how was it?
So my family of origin, now that's a whole other podcast. My parents were, they met in high school. I won't say high school sweethearts because I don't think they ever actually liked each other, but they got married right out of high school and had me a couple of years later. And when I think they even got divorced and got remarried one time, but they had my sister when I was 6 and then I turned 7 right up. And I don't even know how they made a baby but they got divorced. My mom and my infant sister and I moved out and back to Mississippi when I was 6. And then we lived with my grandmother, my mom's mom, my granny, who is a wonderful person. She was so cool and funny and just, I don't know, there's a lot of things wrong with people a lot of things that I don't agree with or identify with people that I came from. But I really believe that she didn't have that heart, so I miss her. But so we lived with her and then my mom remarried and so I had a stepdad. And grew up with them. And then they had another child when I was 11. So I, went to college when I was 18, just down the road to Mississippi State. So I didn't go away far, but nor did I even consider it. I just kind of was like, this is where I'm going to go. This is where my best friend is going. This is, and then went to college and I was there for 3 years and met my first husband. His name is Scott Taylor, and he was from Orlando, and we ended up just moving back there. Or I moved there, which to me was like moving to another country because I'm a little country mouse, always lived in that area. And when I went to college in Starkville, Mississippi, which is by no means a big place, I may as well have moved to, New York City. I was just so overwhelmed. So to move to Orlando, woo, but that was life-changing to get, and thank God I did.
Yeah.
I've been planted roots elsewhere. And lived there, like I said, for 13 years. So this is the place I've been longer than any other place, which is one reason it's home. But I said I'm from here now the first week that I moved here because I just felt it. Christian said when he landed here and got here, he just thought this is home.
Yeah.
Really, that's how I felt too when I was here.
I love that. So you went to Mississippi State and then you moved over to Florida. Like, tell us about your college career, what you majored in and everything.
So I wanted to be a journalist, like back when newspapers were relevant. I wanted to be a journalist my entire life. I loved writing. I loved the concept of journalism that I had, and I still do, actually. Even as an academic, I'd prefer to read real journalism, books by journalists, and thank God for them, especially, now in these times. But I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a newspaper journalist. So in high school, I took a journalism class my senior year. We went to the newspaper for a field trip, and I left and went, oh my God, I don't want to do that. But all I ever knew was just kind of communication and that sort of thing. So I went to Mississippi State and majored in some like communication, public relations, something like that. Mm-hmm. That's what it was, because it was, kind of communication adjacent. I'll tell you, because it's funny given what I do now, but I never in my life was a good student. I always really and truly, all jokes aside, thought that I was just fundamentally not smart and just kind of tricked my way through or whatever. Struggled, especially with math. But had no idea because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 47 in the process of getting our then 5-year-old diagnosed. But I had ADHD, and oh my God, do I have ADHD, and always had. So it explained so much about my academic life. Plus, I didn't come from an academic family, so we didn't know, what to do. Anyway, always struggled. Never an honors student. Went to college. The first semester of my first year of college, my grades were A, B, C, D, F. The F was in music appreciation, and I had the audacity to go to the professor's office because you didn't email, professors back then. And I said, I think there's some mistake because I got an F in this class, and he said, oh, well, let's look at the syllabus. And if you miss more than, whatever number of classes, you get an F, period. And he goes, let's look at attendance. So you missed 11. So according to the policy, that's an F, right? And I was like, yep, thank you. So I picked it up, but I floundered for a while, changed my major to just a million different things, and then finally just thought, I've got to get out of here someday. So let me just go back to the thing I have the most credits in, which was communication. And then kind of got it together when I realized, I was taking things that was interesting, but realized I don't have the money, time, desire to keep spinning my wheels here. So I finished in only one extra semester, but that was actually because I transferred, so that added some time. So I did get my undergraduate in communication, went to work and did some different jobs, but I guess you could say PR, marketing, that kind of was the main thing that I did. And I really hated it. I did not feel that I was contributing anything important to the world. I was not happy. I don't know. I became basically obsessed with figuring out what my passions were. It was very, very hard. And looking back, I'm so thankful for that experience and how awful it was and how hard it was, because it's helped me to help my students. And I have, my own daughter is a junior in high school. So it's helped me help other people in as many ways as anything else ever has. I'm so grateful for that. I call it my early life crisis because 22, 23, 24, absolutely miserable and just searching for my life's purpose. Well, when I found it, I decided to go back and get a master's degree, which was funny because, again, I was a terrible student before and of all things to do. And I remember telling my parents that I was thinking about that, and they were like, really? Kind of like, are you? Mm-hmm. But I did. I went back and longer story, I ended up going back to study sociology because I figured out what it was I wanted to do. And I was a straight A student in grad school. Yeah. Because, I was doing what I was supposed to do, and it was a different educational experience. So it was cut out for a person like me who didn't have the focus or interest to take, 100 classes, 2 of which pertain to what I was interested in studying.
Agreed. Yeah.
I ultimately became a sociologist through this path through communication.
No, I hear you. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a nurse because my best friend wanted to be a nurse, and we thought we would like work at Brackenridge, which was a local hospital. It's not here anymore. Patty Melgar was.
Oh, wow.
And we were going to be roommates. And then I wanted to be a nun for a long time.
Oh.
And I couldn't be a nurse because I get really queasy when I see people vomit. And I can't handle like watching people have bowel movements and stuff. And then definitely I couldn't be a nun because I'm not Catholic. So then what else are you going to do? You're going to be a teacher because you get to do all those things.
That's great. You get to see people grow up for sure.
Okay, but
can I ask, hey, Dr. Taylor, how old are you? Because you look like a co-ed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This conversation is probably overinflating in ways that my family is going to have to deal with later. Listen, this is, as my daughter has named it, the big birthday. We're in the big birthday club. I'm going to be 50 and she's going to be 21 in June. So we're in the big birthday club. And Kristen just turned 47. That's boring. And then our son turned 7, blah, blah, blah. But Macy and I, 50 and 21, and you can't tell us anything. We are planning to, go to New York and get tattoos. And we had a big year plan. So yeah, 50.
Wow. Have any other tattoos?
Yes, I did. Yeah, several. And so my very first one was this little female sign. And I got it on my wrist when I was 30, on my birthday. Maybe I was 35 or 36, my very first one ever. And it was so tiny because I wanted to hide it, And then when she turned 18, she told me she wanted to get that same one.
Oh, no.
So she did. And my sister has it and my niece now has it. So it's really special.
Oh, good. Do you have any other siblings?
Just our brother who is 11 years younger than me, and he's still back in Mississippi. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you and your sister, what's y'all's age difference?
7. So I'm the big sister. So 7 years older than her, almost 7, 11 years older than him. And my sister lives in Sweden. She moved to Sweden like 15, 16 years ago, married a Swedish guy and went there and just, also not, like I said, family stuff and just where we're from. And so she kind of made that her home.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you went into sociology, which I know that can catapult you into criminal justice, but what was the deciding factor in following that passion of yours?
Well, during the early life crisis, and I could make this a very long story or a very short story. So I guess somewhere in the middle, I really was soul searching because the reality set in just even after a couple of years of working is like, okay, well, this is how we spend most of our lives is working, right? Once I'm actually out of school and doing it, I realized we really spend more time working than we do anything else in our lives. And I also realized for me and the way I'm made, I have to be passionate about whatever it is I'm going to do. I mean, burning with passion. Anything less than that will not do. So, and again, this is in the early mid 90s, and we didn't have, or mid to late 90s. Sorry. Of course, we had an internet, but like I went and read books and just talked to people, and there weren't like the same sort of sophisticated tests that you could sort of do your aptitude and all that stuff with the same accuracy that they have some of that stuff now. But anyway, so I searched, and then for 3 or 4 years. And I went to the doctor, I had a heart palpitation. Here I am in my early 20s thinking I've blown it, like life. I've messed it up. I've gotten this degree that I'm not passionate about. And I'm, 23. I'm practically at the end of my life. My perspective is so ridiculous now. But I finally decided I'm not figuring it out in any of these ways. All these books, all these conversations, all this kind of obsessing about it is leading me only to further frustration. So I'll tell you, and I'm not a religious person, but I've had a very small handful of really poignant spiritual experiences in my life, and this was one of them. So I just realized I'm never going to figure this out. So a few just little things happen, like, I don't know, heard something somebody said, read something, and then on a Friday afternoon. I got home from work. Oh, thank goodness it's Friday. I was the person crying on Sunday because I didn't want to go to that awful job the next day, It's Friday, and I think this is it. I'm gonna just let this go. I'm gonna surrender this, and I did. I literally got on my knees and prayed to like capital God, pronouns he, him, God, and just said like, I'm not going to try to chase down this answer anymore. But what I'm doing is like just putting myself out here. I want to be used. And I'll say I heard that from Oprah. I remember that's one of the things she talked about, asking God to use her. And I thought, well, no, that's an idea. Instead of all the places I'm not finding the answer. So I literally did that, physically did it. And then in my heart did it. And I just let it go. And we went to dinner that night, Scott and I went to dinner that night. And I remember telling him, guess what? I'm not going to worry about this anymore. And I'm sure he was like, thank God. That was Friday. Sunday. Do y'all remember the Farrah Fawcett movie, The Burning Bed?
Yes.
Shelley, you've never seen it?
I haven't.
Sorry, it's awful. It's so sad.
So she plays Francine Hughes. It's based on a true story. Francine Hughes was a woman who was beaten by her husband, Mickey Hughes. I don't know how he never killed her. Wasn't for lack of trying. And she had kids, and she did everything you're supposed to do. I mean, she left, she got a divorce, she got a restraining order. She went to his family, she went to her. She did everything she possibly could have done. And he always ended up back there one way or the other, even against her will, and calling the police. So the last time he beat her, I mean, he almost killed her, and she knew he was going to. I mean, because he told her he was, but she also could tell this is imminent at this.
It's escalating, right?
Yeah, over years. So she waited until he passed out, as he always did, drunk in bed, and she put her kids in the car, and she set the house on fire, and she killed him. And that was the precedent case for women having as their defense that it was self-defense. Even though it isn't the way that you think of self-defense, where somebody's coming at you with an axe and you pick up the skillet. It's not that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Still self-defense. It's just much harder to explain. And that case was a precedent case because she was found not guilty because of that.
Oh God! Thank goodness.
That movie. And now I'm the person in the courtroom convincing them of that. So that took me back to the beginning. I had seen that movie many times. I had watched it with my mom. I had watched it. I don't know. It was just one of those movies that was always on, Lifetime or something. And for some reason that night, it just hit me differently. I was in my living room. I was 24 years old. And I realized like I wasn't breathing. I was clenching my teeth. I was clenching my fists. And I just felt that. And now I see that was passion. And I thought, and I may have even said this out loud, when I figure out whatever it is I'm going to do with my life, maybe I'll volunteer or something in this area, because domestic violence sounds really bad. And I think it probably happens a lot. So when I figure out my life, then I'm going to take some interest in this. And then I kind of went, wait a second. So that was it. I mean, on a Friday, I let it go. And on a Sunday, and you remember how the course catalog used to be a book, like a phone book.
Yeah.
I had just gotten my bachelor's degree a couple of years before. So I went and pulled that catalog off the shelf and I started thumbing through it. And I thought, let me go back and get a different degree, because I'm willing to do anything. When I handed it over, I said that I'll do anything, no matter how hard, no matter how long it takes, no matter how expensive. When there's a will, there's a way. So I thought I'm going to go back and get something else. And what I really loved was those sociology courses. And then towards my senior year, I had been taking some criminology electives because they were in the sociology department. And I loved those classes. And I remember thinking, it's too bad I didn't take something like this earlier in college. I would have changed my major and gone on a whole different path. But of course, it's too late for me because I'm 20,
Yeah.
So I think that is a very southern feel about our age. I think you're like, oh, I haven't maximized my potential at the ripe old age of 21.
Yeah. I've done the other things I'm supposed to do. I got married, and I was one of the last people to get married in my class, or I was 22 when I got married. But yeah, I think it is kind of culturally Southern. Also, that was our generation too. I mean,
I agree.
very much so. So I got that catalog out and I thought I really loved those sociology classes and I had a minor in sociology. Maybe I'm not too far away from a degree. And I was so close to a degree in sociology, in fact, that I qualified for I could just go right into the master's program in sociology. And I thought, oh my gosh, me? A master's degree? I don't know, but And then I turned the page and I see that, lo and behold, this sociology program down the street from me, where I got my undergraduate degree, has one of 3 in the country, one of 3 at that time specialization tracks in domestic violence. And I just like the chills on my body like hurt. It was so spiritual experience. You see what I mean? And by the end of that week, I had applied to graduate school, decided, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm going in this direction. I'm following this light. And I didn't know. I had to continue to work full time the whole time through my master's degree and this PR job that I care about. I took 2.5 years to do the master's because I had to work full time. But I absolutely loved those courses. I had no idea what I was going to do with the degree at the end of it. But I truly, I think for the first time in my life about anything, just kind of walked, like leap and the net will appear, they say. I did that. I leapt and I never for a second questioned. And I don't know, it just kind of, and then now 25 years later, here I am, and as passionate as I was that day, that weekend.
That's incredible. I love when people find their, that's so exciting. Yeah.
Right. The Burning Bed reminds me of the Independence Day by Martina McBride. Let freedom ring. Because she was going through the same thing and then she burned it down. I'm not saying that I'm advocating that, but I think that there's, a point where if people are victimized for so long, they can only, there's going to be a breaking point. Either
they follow all the rules. They go to the police. They go and ask friends and family for help, and nobody's hearing the story.
Because sometimes it's so unfathomable. Like you're just like, I cannot believe that's actually happening. But I think one thing I'm hearing more and more is like, believe them, believe what they're saying, like, I don't know. Sometimes it boggles my mind. You hear about people going to the doctor and the doctor's like, that's not what you're feeling. And it's like, well, it actually is what I might be feeling.
Yeah. And the doctor's a good analogy because with abuse, no matter the age, if it's child abuse, partner abuse, or otherwise, there's so much shame and embarrassment and victim blame, not only by the abuser, but by all of society. And so by the time somebody actually does reach out for help, you cannot even imagine what they've been through. And then a lot of the tactics that the abusers use are things that are like isolating them from their family and their support system, alienating them from those people, so that when they do go, the people that they go to either go, hey, don't come to me now. I haven't heard from you in 2 years. And now you're coming to me. And or they often say like, I'm really sorry and I wish I could help you, but I'm scared because these abusers will threaten them and there's no control. That is it. That's what I spend most of my time explaining in this legal work and in my classrooms. Those tactics make it really hard. And we just say like, hey, just leave. If it were me, I would just leave. We all are experts in situations we're not in, right? But just leave. Why don't you just leave? And the fact is, when people are killed, it's about 75% of the time, it's when they're leaving.
When they're trying to leave.
Or have left. And that's all we have to, why don't you just leave? That's what I would do. And you're basically saying, why don't you just hold this hand grenade?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, did y'all not see the movie Enough?
Right.
Jennifer Lopez.
I've not seen all of these movies that I've done. So you're a leader in gender-based violence, and is it primarily against females, or have you ever had to help in like, where it was a male, or how does that work for you? Like, what do you specialize in?
So gender-based violence is my specialization because the vast majority of sexual assault and intimate partner, physical violence, sexual violence, stalking, emotional abuse, all of those things, the vast majority of victims are women, particularly as you go along the continuum of severity. So there's a lot more gender parity in your less severe forms, still illegal, still terrible, still wrong, but minor forms of violence, you see more equal rates. But as you get into more severe levels of violence, the number of women who are victims and men who are victims becomes very, very disparate. So I'm not in court on cases where somebody's been slapped or shoved or even pushed. I mean, these are lethal and non-lethal severe violence. Therefore, most of the time, those are women in those cases. They're, again, as defendant or the prosecution is prosecuting the abuser, and the woman has either died or has survived, but has been through all that. And yes, also I've worked with men. I have cases where men are the victims. The thing is that oftentimes when men are the victims, men are also the perpetrators. So this is really, the scientific fact is, it's not ideological or male bashing. The fact is that most violence is perpetrated by men. And actually, most violence is perpetrated against men. But when we talk about the reason we call it violence against women is that, or gender-based violence, is because intimate partner violence perpetrated against a woman by a man, which is the scenario in most severe violence, sexual violence, all of these things are disproportionately perpetrated against women by men. And so that is a gender-based crime, right. Just like, defacing a mosque or, burning down. So those are religious-based crimes, bias crime, hate crime.
Hate crime, for sure. So you're a professor as well. So you fight in the courtroom, you do a lot of studies, and you're doing a lot of research. And so are you also at Loyola? Is that how I say it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I've been there. That was my first job when I got my Ph.D. and my first job out of grad school. And so I'm in my 15th year. And I've been there the whole time. Yeah. So
did you and Christian meet at UCF or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. In 2006 when we started the program.
Incredible.
So you have done multiple studies on the gender-based violence, and how would you even go about doing one of your studies? Do you take actual people that have been victims of this? Have you ever met with the perpetrators of the violence? How do you go about doing all of your studies? I mean, you have so many different books, journals, studies, research.
Lots of different ways. And that's one thing I love about sociology, and that I love about, I should say social sciences and the research, is that there are so many different things you can do. So the way you design your study is driven by your research questions. So for example, and so I've done a lot of different things. For example, with my dissertation, I was interested in how pregnancy, in whether or not pregnancy increases the risk for domestic violence or not. And so my question is, does it increase the risk or not? And I'm interested in lethal violence as well as non-lethal violence. I'm interested in sexual violence as well as physical violence and emotional violence. And so a dissertation is a massive project, obviously. So there are a lot of different things. But I did in that, what made the most sense was to do what's called secondary data analysis. So taking a data set other researchers had already collected. In this case, the National Institute of Justice had funded this massive study, and just taking those data and running analyses on it based on my questions. So that's a very it's entirely quantitative, and it's just spreadsheet software, doing all that. But
so math, that's math.
Yes. Funny enough, yeah. I could not calculate that stuff by hand if my life depended on it, but you don't have to, because it's all click, click, click and all that. But it was really kind of special for me at the as I found myself, I guess I found my intelligence really, and realized that I was not dumb in graduate school. And so to finish all of my education, the highest level that you can get, when I was stayed grounded more than I didn't as a younger person because of bad grades. And that was the solution, was just ground me, sit me at the table and tell me to stay there until dinner. But that you may as well, I mean, if you're reading a Russian book and you've never heard the language, you're not going to sitting at the table for 9 weeks, right? So when I finally realized, like, I'm not dumb, and I didn't know the source of my, I guess, kind of learning struggles, but I did learn, but I was in the perfect scenario for it. I mean, I think it requires hyperfixation to get through like a doctoral program. And that's a skill with ADHD is hyperfixation.
Hyperfixation.
Yes. So I did that. It was really kind of cool to round out my education, given my history, with a really dense quantitative study. And one of the, so you have 3 of your professors on your dissertation committee, and then you have to have an outside member. And the outside member is this absolute rock star, Dr. Jacqueline Campbell, who I idolized academically, and she agreed to be on my committee, which was unbelievable. And the first thing, she actually tuned into my dissertation defense from another country. She was there giving some keynote address and training. And so it was like 3:00 in the morning her time. So she gets on the conference call and they defer to the guest first. So they let her go first. And she said, the first thing I'll say is, you did 3 dissertations, not 1. And I thought, oh, it would have been great for you to say that in my dissertation proposal defense, so that I would not through all of this. But I don't know. It was really cool. But that said, over the 15 years, what I really care about now is that human voice, particularly that victim voice, that survivor voice. So all the work that I've been doing for the longest time now has been qualitative, which is really kind of talking to people, going back to your question, talking to people who have been victimized. I have not dealt with either in research or in practice offenders of violence, perpetrators of violence. I don't want to. There are people who do that. Thank God for them. And we need way, way, way more. But that's not for me. That's not for me.
No.
There's way more work to go with survivors and with our social systems. I'm going to leave that to somebody else, just like you left nunning to Catholics, for example.
Right. So, leave how you said Catholic.
So what I'm doing now, just to tell you kind of my most recent work, I've been interviewing, and this stems from a study Christian told you about, his 100+ interviews with formerly incarcerated people, mostly men in his study, because mostly men are getting released. But the women who were getting released, who, by the way, almost 100% of women who are incarcerated, and girls, are victims of child abuse, sexual assault, its partner, one or all, or combination of those things. So I'm talking to them and doing these in-depth, gut-wrenching interviews, really, to get their stories, and finding out that in almost all the cases, they are in prison directly because of their abuser.
Absolutely.
Whether it's that they had to commit crimes under duress. So like a case that have been working on, a woman was charged for drug-related crimes. She had no choice to do that. She couldn't even go to the bathroom by herself, because if she went to the bathroom by herself, she'd be on the phone sexting with a man, is what her abuser would always claim. Whether she was pregnant, whether she had a baby on her hip, she couldn't go to the bathroom by herself. But she's supposed to say, no, I'm not going to package these drugs for you. No, I'm not. He would have shot her in the face. So they're either in prison for drugs related to their abuse, or they're in prison because they defended themselves against a rapist, abuser, trafficker. Right. And what we know to be unfortunate, empirically, we understand that women are treated more harshly by the criminal legal system for defending themselves against those kinds of perpetrators than the rapist who kills his victim.
Statistically, they get more time. They get more time for their crime than a male does if they did the same exact crime. Yes.
Yep.
100%. Yeah.
That's mind blowing. And may I ask before we get too far down the road, you're saying gender-based crimes, and you said hate crimes. Is there a push to make it a hate crime because there's more validity in it now? Like there's more backing.
Show that it is a hate crime.
Well, interestingly, it is a hate crime now. Only in the last few years, they added gender. So we had religion and race, ethnicity, disability, but they have added gender. It is not, and I cannot imagine anytime soon them considering domestic violence and even sexual assault as a gender. They don't classify those that way. What would literally count, actually, as counted by the FBI, because they keep the official numbers, would be someone committing a crime against a woman, and because she's a woman, like kind of overtly, explicitly for that reason. Now,
I mean, is it sexual crime because she's a woman?
Yes, because all of those crimes, rape is not about sexual desire. It is about power and control.
Power and control.
The sexual part is secondary to that. Domestic violence is not about anger. Perpetrators of domestic violence are experts in anger management. They don't need anger management. They need to teach anger management because they're selective in their targets for their quote anger. They're not angry. They're entitled to power and control. And our society gives it to them. We say, oh no, men are the ones in power. Just look at our government. Just look at our, CEOs of our businesses. Look at our religious teachings. Look at all of these. We're trying to tell you, yes, men are. It's a patriarchy, right? And so when you rape a person, it is because you feel entitled to power and control over that person. And so, in my opinion, all violence against women at the hands of a stranger, an acquaintance, or a partner, or a family member is a hate crime against women. But it is not, nor can I imagine anytime soon it being classified that way. So it would be, it would just be classified as, DV, and because they don't really care too much about it, unfortunately, in the system. So consequently, even though they've added it to the list, there have been years where there are literally like 4 gender-based hate crime acts in the country in that year. Come on. So they're
right. I'm going to say something. I don't know. We try to stray away from politics to some degree, whatever. I mean, we're not a political podcast, but I'm going to say, I think really, unfortunately, that, or maybe fortunately, maybe it put the gender-based crimes as a hate crime. I think it's a lot because of the transgender movement and how it's becoming more prevalent, and that people are being acted upon violently because their gender underneath their clothes doesn't necessarily match what they're presenting publicly. And so then when there's a crime against them because they're transgender, like somebody gets angry because then they're like, oh, my manhood is being, like, my sexuality is being threatened by a transgender person. I think that's why it's becoming an issue, and it's become called a gender-based crime. And I don't think it's so much that the crimes against women are really mattering again. I'm just like, oh, okay. I unfortunately, we still aren't getting when there is a crime against women, it should be a hate crime.
Yeah.
We're unfortunately still a marginalized population. And we do not have the same powers and the same pay and the same rights and the same. I mean, we're afraid to go into some grocery stores, or we're afraid. We were just interviewing somebody that she was like, I didn't feel comfortable at this place that I met somebody. And when I voiced that, they were like, what's wrong with you? Are you too fancy for this? It's like, no, I just didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people understand that if you're not a female, that it is, anyway, that I'm just.
We navigate the world, and we train our girls that you have to navigate the world to be vigilant because there are real risks. I mean, 1 in 3 are victims of physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 5 women are victims of sexual assault in their lifetime. Like what can you think of that is that epidemic? And yet it is so accepted as just part of it,
It's sad to me. Like I think about my daughters all the time. It's like I just, you worry about it, but
yeah.
Ooh, you are doing some heavy lifting over there, right?
It's an honor to do the work, and I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to stop. But it is also very frustrating because it is one step forward, 2 steps back, or 100 steps back sometimes,
Well,
do the stories ever get to you? Do the stories ever, or how do you manage that?
How do you get through it?
Yeah.
I think it's an important question. So the first thing I always say when someone asks that, which is pretty frequent, is that if it didn't bother me, something would be wrong with me. I would be a sociopath. Like you'd have to be a robot, and I'm certainly not. I think the way, just kind of practically, that I get through it is just training and experience. Like I'm sure as an educator, I'm sure there are things now you can just really handle very expertly that maybe in your first few years would have just made you think, am I even in the right profession? So I've gotten a lot more skilled the longer I do it. And, again, training, experience, education, all that helps. And it does get to me, and it should get to me. But it is, and it's hard work, but there are a lot of things that are hard. I always say there's nothing about this that to me that is harder than being like a preschool teacher. That would be the hardest thing I could imagine. So to me, this is hard in the right way. Like I can do hard things. I can do this. I do, though. I have had, fortunately, it's not too often, but I have had cases where I had to just take a break from it. The first time I worked on a case where a child was killed, and it was horrendous. And I had to see pictures, and it was terrible. It was a death penalty case. I got all the way through months of reading all that stuff, working with the attorneys, getting prepped, and I was all set to leave the next day to go and interview the mother of this little girl. And I closed my computer. I thought, okay, I set my alarm for the airport, and I just burst into tears. It just, and I didn't even realize it was kind of, but it just came out, and it was very cathartic. And so that happens infrequently. I'm okay if it happened every time. That would be okay. But I don't know. I just keep pressing through it because it feels important, for me to do that. But I do reflect on every person I talk to, every case, every class, I do kind of reflect and process that stuff. And then, of course, my husband does similar work. And so we're really able to support each other. He has heard these similarly horrific things. So
he lived it.
And lived it. Yeah. We're uniquely positioned to support each other.
Yes.
In a way that is great. Yeah.
And I don't think people, like, if you're not in it, you might not understand it, It's like doing these diving into really difficult situations. And if you didn't have that partner that was in it too, they might, it's like when you hear about people that work in homicide or rape crisis stuff, and then they go home and they don't tell their significant other anything.
Yeah.
And bury it. And then it comes out eventually. They start drinking, or they start, escaping in different ways. I mean, I can't imagine. It's so hard. I mean, John doesn't want to hear about my day. I can't imagine, like, if I was doing something like, really, really hard.
Well, Jody works at a behavioral unit, and it is a very
hard. Very hard.
Yeah. When I can say it, I think I'll go to John and I'll tell him like the funny stories, like, hey, somebody cussed me out today and this is what they said. And I'm like, I can't believe that 5-year-old said that to me. They know more words than I didn't even know those words until like college. But I'm like, wow. I don't know how to use them. I'm like, how do you... No, I think that's, I do want to ask you, this is a really touchy question, but the rape kits in hospitals, I know that there's a backlog and everything on a lot of those, but like, do you think because it feels like sometimes the victim gets re-victimized. I think they should definitely do it if they feel comfortable doing it. But do you think there's another way that people could get the information they need, like the DNA and all of that, without the level of
invasion?
Yeah. Is there anything on the horizon to help with this? Because I'm just like, I've just heard and, how hard it can be for people to go through it again. They just get another way. Or are you seeing somewhere that they're doing those in a kinder, gentler way that makes people feel less?
I've been there for a lot of those because I've worked as a volunteer medical advocate. And so you go to the hospital and when somebody's there because they've been sexually assaulted or beaten up or whatever. So I'll tell you, one of the best innovations in that field was SANE nursing, sexual assault nurse examiners. And so that field is probably about 20 years old now or so. They're specially trained. So these are nurses who might be obstetric nurses, they might be surgical nurses, they might be hospice nurses or pediatric nurses. It doesn't matter where they come from, and they come from everywhere, but they voluntarily sign up for this extensive training to become SANE nurses. And then they do, except for in certain areas where there's just so much demand that they do that all the time, they do that in addition to their other kind of nursing. And so that specialization for that training also includes all the kind of emotional and all that stuff too. So I'm sure there are bad apples like there are in everything, but all the SANE nurses, and I've met many from all over the country, are in this. Again, it's voluntary. They're in this because they're very passionate about it, and they're very sensitive to how invasive it is, how delicate of a situation it is because of what the person has just been through. So that's huge. The process of the rape kit can be anywhere from 45 minutes to 6 hours, depending on how it's been. Most of the time, so in New Orleans, for example, there are two places you can go for a rape kit. One is University Hospital, which is a big trauma hospital, and you're in the ER, just like if you have a car accident or something like that. The other is at the Family Justice Center, which is a model that you'll see in different cities around the country. They have called the Hope Clinic, and it is a much warmer, fuzzier, still a medical clinic, but and then when you've got children who go through this, now that's the unthinkable, is a pediatric forensic exam, which is a thing. Those places, especially if they have a child advocacy center, which is another model you'll see around the country, they are as warm and soft and kind of an environment as you can possibly make for children. That training of the people, the kind of environment, they do things like so going back to the hospital for grown people, they'll give you clean, fresh, brand new clothes with the tags on to change into when you leave. They'll give you, everything that they can to kind of make things comfortable. So the exam itself is completely voluntary. So every part of it, and there's lots of parts of it. It's the pelvic exam and examination of just kind of all of the body, and then just a ton of swabbing for samples, and that's everything from the fingernails to all of your bodily, openings to everywhere else, because DNA can come in a lot of different forms. It's not uncommon at all for there to be no DNA, and that's a big issue in the courts, because it's like, surely there's a fiber or a fingernail on CSI always. In real life, no, not even on children. So at any stage, the patient can say, I don't want you to do that. And they won't. But if a person were to go through all of it, it's quite invasive. One part that I would often see people say, wait a second, what is photography of your genitalia? And they're trying to understand why the hell you need to do that, where the the nurse is saying you absolutely don't have to do it, but there is bruising here, there is tearing here that I can see visually. And if you decide you want to go to court, this is evidence. And every single time they always consented to do it, once they understood why they were having to do it. The other purpose for a lot of it is testing. So they're going to test for HIV and other sexually transmitted infections, pregnancy. And of course, a lot of that stuff is not going to show up hours after you've been exposed. But so it is invasive, but there are really good reasons for every step.
Yeah.
But it is invasive, period. And I don't know of anything else they draw blood, they do, and then they give you antibiotics, they give you all this different stuff. I don't know of anything being developed to make that situation different. Doesn't mean there's not. I just don't know.
I think you're basically speaking to it. You have to be really well trained, and you have to have a place that doesn't blame the victim, re-traumatize the victim as much as possible, but having really trained advocates and helpers in that scenario and giving people the respect that they need at that time, and being gentle and patient with them as they struggle through that, for sure. So I can see that you have your beautiful pink hat. So what did you think of the Me Too movement? Do you feel like it helped catapult a lot of these issues into more of a global public stage? Do you think it was very helpful? What did you think of the Me Too unit movement back in, gosh, when was that? During COVID, right before COVID?
Yeah, I marveled at the scale of it. It was definitely international. There were people who were seemingly untouchable who finally, after decades and decades of being predators, were brought to justice. But, just looking at it from a more historical context and knowing these movements as part of my job is to know the history of this stuff. It's kind of like everything else where it waxes and wanes. And, you have these big events over the course of history. For example, OJ, when OJ killed his wife and almost decapitated her, murdered her after years of abuse, everybody cared about domestic violence. And in the scope of, or in the context of that case and that big movement and awareness, we had legislation change, and we had that awareness spread and did a lot of great things. And then we kind of didn't care about it again. And so that's how it always is. Exactly. It'll just come in waves. And so Me Too was powerful in putting it in, like a lot of things have, kind of, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the victims' rights movement, where it's like, okay, we're putting this out here and we're not taking it back. You absolutely will listen to us. We will not stop. So it was powerful in that way, but then it kind of fizzles out, like always. And then the other thing that happens predictably is that there will be such pushback that the pendulum will swing way in the other direction. And so, I know you're not a political podcast, but look then what the responses can be and how people can be litigated and found responsible for something and then ultimately not held responsible for it.
Yeah.
And, you're talking about sexual assault, and then you see women doing things not in the best interests of women and survivors and things like that. So that is so discouraging. And it does not mean that we should not continue with these movements, because those are the only things that ever get anything done, right? It doesn't mean that Me Too is dead. It doesn't mean that it wasn't effective. It's just what we're seeing is just predictable patterns that we see all throughout history.
No.
Well, we just interviewed this amazing woman like yourself, Laurel Roselle, and she did a documentary called The Ladies of Yazidi, and it's about the women who built their own army against the Taliban, and it's quite fascinating. So, and her interview was incredible. So we're going to have to stop talking for a minute, but I have to ask you, just to bring it back to something a little lighter, where do you like to eat in New Orleans?
Everywhere. New Orleans is so hard to question. Like when people say, "What's your favorite restaurant?" It's like, are you serious? For what? My favorite Vietnamese. My favorite, okay. Where do so you're not asking me my favorite. Where do I like to eat?
What's your favorite? What's your?
No. We like to eat in the more I don't want to say mom and pop or hole in the wall. But
Yes.
we've got all the 5-star restaurants and chefs and Michelin and all that kind of stuff. And those are amazing places. But the best ones are the kind of approachable ones that are sometimes are holes in the wall, but that is the majority of New Orleans. Is so those places that have been around for a while. If something's not great here, it's not going to be around for a while. So we love a lot of the fusion places are really delicious. There's a restaurant called Louis that is my current favorite. That is kind of like an Asian Cajun fusion sort of place.
Nice.
We have amazing Vietnamese food in New Orleans. And I love eating. And then, of course, I love all the, standard gumbo, jambalaya, all that kind of stuff too, which you can find all over the place. So
yes,
just eat in the kind of casual, local.
Well, when we come to New Orleans next, Shelly and I are going to come and hang out with you.
We would love it. And we'd love to come see you. Are you both in Austin?
We are.
We need to come see you in Austin.
Please do.
Awesome.
And I think we're going to interview your sweet little son.
Yes.
We are fans of both of you. I am so impressed with everything you guys are doing. And thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I mean, I want to cry.
I know.
I'm so impressed with who you are. And
oh my goodness. Likewise. It's so you're the whole concept of adjacent is so beautiful. It really is. And then you're putting people's voices and stories out there and awareness and laughter and all that stuff. And I love sisters. That's what makes me cry. My sister's in Sweden. If I'm like shopping, my daughter and I, we love to go thrifting, and I see like two grown women and you can tell they're sisters, that I just get choked up because so I loved listening to y'all. Add me to your families because our whole family actually.
Well, we are in love with you, and we are going to be sending good vibes your way and hope that
keep fighting the fight. Keep fighting that good fight. Man.
Thank you. And you too. This is a wonderful platform you've created here.
Just wait till you hear our single and ready to mingle sexy time. February.
Okay.
It's not for kids. It's after hours.
I'll be waiting for that. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna say our goodbye line. Texas, Texas.
Yeehaw.